panel as well. So I will begin, and before I get into the weeds on some of the questions, if I can bring up on the screen up here, and you can, once you do that, you can begin my time. Just to dispel the myth with regard to the first issue, which is regarding lack of funding for the agency. And I know it's a little hard, but that chart basically shows the SEC budget obligations from the year 2000 to 2011. And you can see it's almost a straight line up, and what that is a basic average year-over-year increase on average of over 10.8% from 2000 to 2011. Now, if you go to the next chart to find out, let's see, next chart. Try to go to the next chart. How about that one? That chart asks the question, well, what was the actual rate of inflation during those years? Well, it goes up and down, of course, but the average period was 2.5%. So that last chart showed you that they were getting around over a 10.8% each year. This is the actual increase in inflation overall, 2.5. So the final and third chart puts these things together for you and shows you, there you go, what would have been their funding had they been increased in funding level at a constant level of 2.5% year over year over year compared to the initial chart. So I think that sort of dispels the myth that there's been an agency that's been starved. Understandably, there's been a larger marketplace, more regulation, and Dodd-Frank increases all the responsibilities, as all said. But overall, it's a stark difference between where they would be had they been like most other businesses, families, what have you, living within the means of the average increase of 2.5%, and instead actually over 4 times as much of 10.8% year over year. So that's the funding aspect. But let's get into some of the things that you're actually working on right now. So, Mr. Cook, just a quick question here with regarding to a consolidated audit trail and doing so in real time. Can you tell me where are we on that? Are you still pursuing a real-time consolidated audit trail, briefly?
The Commission has not yet acted on that. We are reviewing all the comments that have come in. As you're alluding to, there was a part of the proposal was a real-time reporting element, and we're looking at the comments to determine whether that should stay at one of the elements and how that fits together with the rest of the costs of the program and how to make it most efficient.
Yeah, that's one of the points. Obviously, it's going to be pretty expensive to do something like that, right? And secondly, would actually real time be absolutely necessary to be done? Because wouldn't at an end of day aggregation be just as about adequate? Because I don't know anyone's going to be able to just stay up on top of it. Is that true?
It's a good question, Congressman. We're trying to strike the right balance between finding something that's very cost-effective, that we give us the information we'll actually be in a position to use, but also if we're going to go through this process of building something out like this, and it'll be a multi-year process to build this audit trail, that we build something that is not just what we need today, but will be something that we can use in the future. We've been thinking a lot and looking closely at new technologies that we weren't aware of when the original proposal came out that we're hopeful will allow us to substantially reduce the costs.
But it is, in other words, bottom line is you haven't done it yet, but you're still considering going forward with it.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Kazami, somewhere I have here is an article that was in Bloomberg a little bit ago, and I'll just, I guess last June it was, and I'll just ask you, I'll dig through it and find it, but what it was talking about some of the efforts to try to bring that technology to the workforce there, to the lawyers and what have you. And the article is talking about giving BlackBerries, which every one of us up here have, to make sure that the folks in enforcement staff would actually be able to be in communication with. My understanding just from that article was that there was pushback to that from the unions on that, and the pushback was, according to the piece, was that, well, we don't want our paid staff, the lawyers, having to be responsible to responding after business hours, after 5 p.m. Is that the case that there was pushback from the unions on that, and that was part of the impediment, part of the impediment of doing that?
Congressman, there was some initial comments to that effect, but in my experience, it dissipated quickly. People are using them, and I certainly have never had a situation where I haven't been able to reach someone, or someone has told me that they haven't been able to reach someone for that reason.
But that was pushback from, where did the pushback come from?
The issue was raised by, I can't remember whether or not it was the union or some other individual or group of individuals, but like I said, I don't think it gained any traction.
Okay, because that's, I mean, we're all here on a 24/7 process. You would think the folks who we were talking about, these are enforcement people, these are attorneys, are they not, in a lot of cases?
Yeah, there's a large percentage of lawyers in the enforcement division, that's correct.
And I guess you would agree, sort of well-paid folks, so asking them to work after 5 hours at 5 p.m. would be an appropriate responsibility.
Clearly, and I have seen no shortage of people willing to commit and work hard, so I don't think that issue is any kind of impediment.
Okay. So another report that came out with regard to, Mr. Florio, with regard to pushback, I guess, from the unions, there was an attempt to implement a quality review, control review after each examination. And this, basically, the idea from this came from other members' comments here with regard to the Madoff examination, what have you, right? So you know what I'm talking about. But I understand in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, again, there was some pushback by the unions in this area. And I understand that the post-examination quality process, and you tell me if this is still not implemented due to continued union objections. So first of all, is that the case?
Chairman, since I joined a year ago, I have not had any problem pursuing quality control in the examination process. We've implemented a number of quality control mechanisms as we've streamlined our exam process, and we've not had pushback from the union with regard to the initiatives I've implemented. I'm not familiar with initiatives that may have been the case before I joined.
So none of the things that you've tried to do during the time
We
have had pushback for?
We have a process where we engage the union in the recommendations and initiatives, but we did a comprehensive review with over 25 initiatives for improvement identified, and we're moving those forward, certainly in consultation with the union.
Okay, so were there any recommendations out of the report that were supposed to be implemented prior to you coming into your position that were not implemented, that you have looked back on and said, well, these have still have not been pursued and implemented because of any other impediments whatsoever?
I don't believe so, Chairman, but I will look into that when I get back and get back to you if there were any issues.
Okay. And as always, the time goes faster than the list of questions that are before me. To the